Welcome to the Breakthrough Advisor Podcast. In this podcast, we inspire advisors with ideas and pathways to break through barriers and build a thriving retirement income business. We will interview innovative technology developers, business leaders, and successful advisors, then help you organize and execute these ideas to move your business forward.
Hey folks, welcome to the Breakthrough Advisor Podcast. Today we've got a little bit of breaking news to talk about. We sit here on the cusp of the Social Security Fairness Act being signed by Joe Biden, and we wanted you guys to be the first to hear, how this can impact your business, what you need to be talking to your clients about with respect to, their next steps, and all those sorts of detail things. So I'm joined by Mary Beth Franklin. Mary Beth, thank you for carving time out of your holiday schedule to join us. We really appreciate this. How have your holidays been?
They've been great. Good Christmas, good New Year, and looking forward to an exciting 2025.
Awesome. Well, it's starting with a bang. So just to dive right in, for years, those of us who have done retirement income planning for our clients, and when we talk to teachers, when we talk to firefighters, when we talk to military service personnel, we always had to have this conversation about a pension offset and about a windfall exception. Okay, and so what those do, what those are about is, well, Mary Beth, I'll let you frame it. You tell us what are those two things about? Why were they there, and what are the changes that are happening?
Well, the majority of American workers are covered by Social Security in that they pay payroll taxes, FICA taxes, that support their future Social Security benefits. But there are some people, you mentioned firefighters, policemen, other emergency personnel in many states who pay into their own pension fund and do not pay Social Security payroll taxes on their wages. And in about a dozen states, this might also include teachers, nurses, state, local workers that pay into their own separate retirement plan. Consequently, the rules for Social Security benefits for these public employees are different and have been for more than 40 years. But that's about to change. There are two rules involved. The first one is called Windfall Elimination Provision, WEP, and that applies to a worker. Think worker windfall. The worker who has a public pension based on work where he or she didn't pay FICA taxes. And in addition, that public sector worker has a pension from this separate retirement system. That worker who had earned a Social Security benefit would get a Social Security benefit, but it would be reduced by something called the Windfall Elimination Provision. They'd get a Social Security benefit, but it could be reduced. And if someone was collecting on their earnings records, such as a spouse, the spouse's benefit would also be reduced by this windfall elimination provision. Now, separately, there was something called government pension offset, GPO. Think of this as grumpy partner. This applies only to spouses while their spouses are alive or survivor after their spouse has died. And these would be people like, for example, you're a school teacher in Louisiana or Texas that has their own retirement system. These teachers have never paid into Social Security, so they're not entitled to their own Social Security benefit. But heck, they're married to somebody who's paid into Social Security all their lives. Shouldn't they get a spousal benefit while their mate's still alive? Or survivor benefit after their mate dies? Well, in many cases, no, because this government pension offset rule would totally wipe out their spousal or survivor benefit. So if you're among the nearly 3 million retirees that have a public pension that's separate from the Social Security system, you may be among those very angry retirees who for more than 4 decades have been saying these two rules, the windfall elimination provision and the government pension offset, are simply unfair. Let's get rid of them. Well, guess what? Congress finally listened. And at the end of the 2024 Congress, one of the last pieces of legislation to be passed was a repeal of the government pension offset and windfall elimination provision. Now, your all basic civics lessons know that a president has to sign this legislation for it to become law. And we do expect President Biden to sign what is called the Social Security Fairness Act into law on January 6th.
There you go, folks. So that's the breaking news. That's what those headlines they've been dropping into your email and social media feed have been about. Here's the why behind why we think this is so important. Mary Beth mentioned 3 million retirees. Okay, so if you have clients who are retired who have that kind of job profile, then this is definitely a conversation. But there are literally tens of millions of people who haven't retired yet who fall into that segment. And so as you start to think about your marketing campaigns for, Q1 25, that's an item that you might want to put on your hot list that may attract a lot of conversation. And we'll talk more about that in just a second. So, Mary Beth, if I've got a surviving spouse as a client, what should I be talking to them about today?
Well, if you are, you have a client who, again, let's say Texas school teacher, a California public servant that are affected by these offset rules, and it's quite possible that widow, even though her husband has died and he was entitled to Social Security, she probably wasn't entitled to a survivor benefit because of this government pension offset. So she probably never even applied for it. Well, this repeal, once it's signed into law, will be retroactive to the beginning of 2024. Social Security has not put out any guidance of how this is going to work. But generally, if you may be entitled to a Social Security benefit, but because of the old rules never applied for it, you will have to apply for a Social Security survivor benefits. Now, it may take a while for Social Security to work out all these details. And again, it would be retroactive to the beginning of 2024. So once this is straightened out and you apply for benefits and gotten whatever retroactive benefits you're entitled to, then going forward, you would get a monthly benefit. Now, the one thing that's interesting, and again, we have not seen guidance from the Social Security Administration yet, is under most circumstances, the largest retroactive benefit you can get is 6 months. But this law specifically says that the WEP GPO repeal would be effective for payments after December 2023, which effectively means payments beginning in 2024. So people could be getting a chunk of benefits once this is put into effect.
That's awesome. So does this extend to federal employees?
Well, it depends, as many things. When the Social Security reform legislation dating back to 1983, back at that time, federal workers did not participate in the Social Security system. They were under their own separate civil service retirement system. So there was actually two categories of federal workers after that, those under the old system who did not pay FICA taxes and who were not entitled to a Social Security benefit. And then after 1984, federal employees hired at that point were under a new system called the Federal Employee Retirement System, or FERS. They paid FICA taxes, Social Security payroll taxes, and were entitled to Social Security benefits in the future. But of course, it's never that simple. My husband is a federal retiree, and he was one of the people that fell in the middle in something called a hybrid system, that they participated in the old civil service retirement system. They left the government. They came back within a certain amount of years and then had the choice. Did they want to be in the new federal employee retirement system, or did they want to be in the CSRS offset, which is what he chose, meaning he had a federal pension and now going forward paid Social Security taxes. So we also qualified for Social Security benefits. And there are postal workers all over the country that have their separate retirement system. They have been affected by these pension offsets in the past, And going forward, presumably, they will be entitled to Social Security benefits.
So for sure, postal workers is what you're saying. And then for other federal employees, depends on which system they opted into.
Right.
So that becomes kind of a defining question, right? Are you a FERS person or are you a CSRS person?
The other defining question that a financial advisor needs to ask his clients. The Social Security system, when you pay FICA taxes, you earn up to 4 credits per year. And you need at least 40 credits, or essentially 10 years of work in covered employment, to be eligible for a future Social Security benefit. If you have one of these public service employees who does not have at least 40 credits under the Social Security system, they're not entitled to a Social Security benefit. But hey, if they're a few credits short and they work part-time, they could be eligible for a Social Security benefit in the future.
Gotcha. Got you. Okay. Are there any other pockets of public servants that may be interesting to us? Military, for instance.
Well, you had mentioned at the top of the program, military retirees. And actually, military retirees in general are not affected by this because U.S. military has been paying into the Social Security system since the mid-50s. So they were never affected by these offset rules unless once they retired from the military, then they took a job as a public employee in one of these states that has their separate system. For example, California, Louisiana, Texas, many of the New England states, Ohio, Illinois, they all had a separate public pension system, and these people would be affected. Now, also, there are many people who are not Native American. They have employment under under foreign pension systems. Many of these people were affected by the windfall elimination provision. Let's say they had some of their work experience in Canada and they had a pension from Canada, and they also worked long enough in the United States to earn a Social Security benefit, but that benefit may have been reduced because they also had a public pension from Canada where they didn't pay Social Security FICA taxes. Many other Western European countries, some Asian countries, you also have these clients who may have a public pension from a foreign government that in the past had reduced their Social Security benefit. They may get a full benefit going forward.
Gotcha. 2 different segments. People who were excluded from drawing Social Security because of the double dipping thing, and then surviving spouses, right? So 2 different conversational flows to have.
Right. The key for the advisor is saying, in the past, the person who was, quote, penalized by these offsets was the person who had the public pension based on work where they never paid FICA taxes. Again, I'm that Texas school teacher. I've never paid Social Security payroll taxes. I'm not entitled to Social Security benefit on my own, but I'm married to somebody who is. Once these 2 provisions are effectively repealed and made into law, I've never gotten a Social Security spousal or survivor benefit in the past. I could get a benefit going forward.
Okay, excellent. So I want to circle back to your scenario where someone was in the military, okay, and then retired out, and then went to work, let's say, for the state of Texas, okay? So does that mean that because of that state of Texas pension, that they are not, before the change, eligible for Social Security?
Well, if they had worked for the state of Texas and they were in the military, so while they were in the military, they were paying payroll taxes, and they'll get a military pension and are probably eligible for a Social Security benefit based on their own work record. But now they have a public pension from the state of Texas. Up until now, they would get a Social Security benefit based on their earnings record, but it would be reduced because they had this public pension from the state of Texas. Going forward, they will get their full Social Security benefit retroactive to January 2024 payment once Social Security puts all these new rules into effect. And frankly, I have no idea how long that's going to take. And Social Security Administration probably doesn't either, because they have to figure out how many millions of people are affected by this. And keep in mind, Social Security workforce is at its lowest level in decades because of basically budget freeze for many years, just at the time where the number of Social Security recipients are at record levels because of the retiring baby boomers. So you have this huge customer service crunch of people under normal circumstances just applying for Social Security benefits and waiting for the Social Security administrators to process those requests. Now you're going to put millions of additional requests on top of this that are very complicated and are going to have to be reviewed on a case-by-case basis. The guidance that the Social Security Administration put on its website on December 23, 2024, after the legislation was passed, is once this bill is signed into law, just stay tuned. And as soon as we have new information, we will post it on the website. But the general guidance is people who have earned a Social Security benefit on their own earnings record, and because their Social Security benefits have been reduced because they have a public pension, they're on the Social Security records. Whenever this gets straightened out, their benefits should automatically increase. That will be taken care of. The issue is going to be for people who tried to collect benefits as a spouse or a survivor, but because of the government pension offset rule, it wiped out their benefit. They have no Social Security benefits. So they're not in the Social Security Administration record. Once these offsets get repealed and all the rules are straightened out, those people are going to actually have to apply for a Social Security benefit. And that's where a financial advisor can be critically important, saying to those clients who may have a public pension, let's look back and see if you might be entitled to a Social Security spousal or survivor benefit, and let's make sure you apply for it once the guidance is issued.
You just dropped a large package of wisdom that we need to dive into. But before we do that, so here's what the website says. At this time, the Social Security Administration is evaluating how to implement it if it is signed into law. So that's an inherently scary thought, okay? Because for those of us who have dealt with the Social Security Administration with clients in the past, they have not been a great resource for consumers, okay? Hence the reason why so many advisors have become super experts on how to manage the Social Security benefit process. And that's why, your teaching and training and education that you provided us over the years has been so invaluable, because there's this big black hole in the Social Security Administration. So I'm a little scared for people who want to get their money out of Social Security after this law changes. I think it's going to be more than a minute before they figure it all out.
That's it. It's going to take a while to figure out how to implement. This is a brand new law. You've got two different groups of people who are already entitled to benefits that will probably get a benefit boost as a result of this, and people who may be entitled to benefits on their spouse's earnings record or their ex-spouse's earnings record, but they're not on the books yet. And they're going to actually have to apply for benefits. You layer all this on top of the fact that there's already a customer service crunch at the Social Security Administration due to high demand and reduced staffing levels. You're going to have a new administration along with the new Social Security administrator. So you've got a lot of balls in the air. Do not expect this to happen overnight.
Hey, folks, one of the things that we've learned over the years is that sometimes it's hard to get consumers to follow your advice, to get them to become your client. And that's because they fear change. Okay. And so what we have to do is walk them through overcoming the status quo. And so what we end up doing is looking for a problem that they have that we can help them solve. We have defined a problem. These, however, hundreds of thousands or millions of people are impacted by this are all going to have questions. I had a question that came out of this. So this isn't free. This is going to cost us, right? And so we've been having this conversation about Social Security funding for a while. And I think what is it? The actuaries say 2035, is a critical date. I would think if we're going to start paying out more in Social Security benefits, that's going to pull that date forward by a big margin. What do you think?
Bingo. The interesting thing is the repeal of these two provisions, the government pension offset rule that affects spouses and survivors, and the windfall elimination provision that affects the workers themselves, who also has a public pension. It's called the Social Security Fairness Act, but the only people who really think this is fair are these public employees who want bigger benefits. Nobody is paying for this, and various congressional-based partisan think tanks said, well, this is probably going to cost about $196 billion over the next 10 years, and there's no way to pay for this. Now, keep in mind, Social Security is a self-financing program in that those FICA payroll taxes that we and our employers all pay are what are the major source of funding Social Security benefits. And as you mentioned, Jack, we've known for decades that due to the demographics of more retirees and fewer workers and various other things, income inequality, that the Social Security self-financing mechanism was going to run into long-term problems. At this point, the trustees expect sometime within the next 10 years, sometime by about 2035, the excess trust funds, revenues that we have been drawing down on in addition to the regular FICA tax payrolls, when those trust funds are exhausted, there is not going to be enough money to pay 100% of promised Social Security benefits. So two things could happen. Either all Social Security beneficiaries take an across-the-board cut of about 20%, or Congress has to come up with a solution sometime within the next 10 years to right the system again. That could be a combination of benefit tweaks, maybe a higher full retirement age in the future. It could be tax changes, either more of our payroll earnings could be subject to taxes. It could be at a higher rate. We could take the cap off the Social Security payroll taxes. Lots of things they can do, but they have to do something because Social Security is not allowed to borrow from general revenues. It can only pay out benefits based on the revenues that it has within this system. Now, go back several years, there have been several other pieces of legislation called the Social Security Fairness Act that would do things like repeal WEP and GPO. But those earlier pieces of legislation had ways to pay for it. One example was higher taxes on people earning more than $400,000 a year would pay higher payroll taxes. This version that the House and Senate approved in late 2024 had no means of paying for it. So it basically means the exhaustion of the trust funds would come even sooner than have been predicted. Now let's layer some other ideas on top of it. President-elect Trump says he doesn't want Social Security benefits subject to income taxes. Right now, majority of Social Security beneficiaries pay income taxes on at least a portion of their Social Security benefits. If we take away that as well, it means the Social Security trust funds are going to be exhausted even sooner. These are feel-good pieces of legislation. Hey, you get a tax cut and you get a benefit increase, but who's going to pay for it? So many people feel that maybe this should not be called the Social Security Fairness Act, because perhaps it's not fair to the rest of the Social Security beneficiaries who paid in payroll taxes their entire career. And now what they're getting is perhaps a benefit cut even sooner than expected.
Yeah, I don't want to go down a rabbit hole, but this sounds like the Inflation Reduction Act from a year or so ago, right? Yeah. Okay. So previously we had conversations about this funding question and how to deal with this with clients. And where we landed was maybe it makes some sense as you're doing retirement income planning for your clients to model this with a reduction in Social Security benefits. Okay. And so what we said was instead of taking your software and running it at 100% Social Security benefit, maybe think about dialing that back And so we've talked with our folks at Lifefield, and we've done demonstrations on how our team can do that. But I think more than ever, I think it's important for us to have conversations with people who maybe aren't directly impacted by the Social Security Fairness Act, but are indirectly impacted by this funding question, to start to say, all right, well, how do things look if this income stream is a little bit less?
I think that's prudent. And if you ran your projections at 80% of expected Social Security benefits rather than 100%, because people freak out. They thought, a 20% cut in benefits. But most people have other sources of retirement income in addition to Social Security. And we're talking scaling back just the Social Security portion of that retirement income plan. Now, a lot of people will say Congress has never cut benefits for existing beneficiaries. And it's highly unlikely they would do that. And they'd probably grandfather in near retirees as well, maybe people within 10 years of retirement. I can no longer guarantee that. Yes, it's true that Congress has never cut benefits on existing retirees, but could they? Anything's possible at this point. And the reality is Congress is going to have to grapple with this long-term funding of Social Security, and it's going to have to figure out all sorts of ways to tweak it, perhaps both on the benefit and on the revenue side.
So from a planning perspective, best case scenario is Congress and the president figure out how to fund this. Okay. Worst case scenario is we stay in gridlock and nothing happens and benefits are reduced. Okay. And so in that scenario, for retirees and for pre-retirees, we talk about the benefit reduction. And maybe the mid-course of that is no benefit reduction for current retirees, but maybe pre-retirees should look at a benefit reduction. You think that's a reasonable?
Yeah. And okay. Again, I used to say I had a pretty good pulse on what Congress was doing, but my crystal ball looks like a snow globe these days. It's very fuzzy.
It is. I mean, and then you add, this whole thing about cutting spending, and it makes this whole conversation with Social Security even worse, right? I mean, they give average advice at best case scenario now, being understaffed, and now we start to cut. It's just a scary prospect. This is a huge opportunity for financial advisors. Huge opportunity. So let's talk about, if you're an advisor, the best approach today is to make contact with people who are potentially impacted. Have the conversation, make the connection, okay? There will be more educational material coming out on this. So I would say, if you're looking at your webinar schedule for Q1, think about Social Security webinar seminars. There will be content coming, new slides coming on those presentations so you can incorporate this. But I would say think ahead a little bit and think about, who you're going to target in those webinars and seminars and how you're going to educate them. Once that comes in, I know our friends at Lifefield are burning the midnight oil to reprogram and manage the change. And I think it's going to be easy for them because they kind of had that WP GPO thing kind of as a separate calculation to start with. And I know that the Social Security certification planning certification folks are scurrying, with their training material as well. So what other resources can you put on our radar that I haven't mentioned?
Well, once this gets straightened out, Social Security may have some very good guidance on its website. It's just not there yet. It's not written yet. But as some reference point, back in the Balanced Budget Act of 2015 that took away two valuable claiming strategies, file and suspend, and filing a restricted claim for spousal benefits. Those are all history now. But once that legislation was passed, the Social Security Administration's guidance on how those two different provisions would be implemented were really quite good. So I think we just have to be a bit patient and wait for the legislation to be signed into law, for the Social Security Administration to digest it, to figure out how to implement it, and then how to give guidance. But some other things financial advisors might want to think about. If you have clients that may be getting Social Security benefits retroactive to the beginning of 2024 because of these changes, well, Social Security benefits are taxable. You might want to be running projections. What would 12 months of retroactive benefits added to your client's income due to their income taxes? Is it going to push them into a higher threshold for higher Medicare benefits in the future? And what, if anything, you could do? Are you thinking about Roth IRA conversions? Or you think of tax harvesting at the end of the year? You really will be sharpening your toolbox to deal with not just these Social Security changes, but the various other parts of financial planning that could be implemented by it.
Yeah, 100%. And so I'm not encouraging people to go out and jump way ahead of the curve, but Social Security planning seminars and webinars have been one of the highest converting events for financial advisors for the last 12 months. And so you're not going to go wrong if you stick with that course. What I'm saying is think about how you might enhance that content. Think about how you might retarget who you want to invite to those events and how you want to frame your invitations. And all of that will become much clearer, in the next few weeks, I'm sure.
And I think it would be the gift that keeps on giving, because your clients and prospective clients probably have a lot of questions to which there are no answers at this point. But if you can say, if you join my mailing list, I will update you going forward every time there is some new information. And it may take a year or two to really spin out all this information. But in the meantime, you are the trusted source of guidance.
Yeah, I can tell you 100% that I know it's I think when Biden signs this on the 6th, that there are going to be a flurry of Google searches about Social Security Fairness Act. So if I were a financial advisor, if I were still a financial advisor and I wanted to attract new clients, I would get a widget on my website over the weekend that says, to learn more about Social Security, click here to opt in. And so that's an easy way to turn those leads into prospects. So, well, this has been fantastic. What in your mind, what haven't we touched on? What should we share before we sign off?
Well, just to remember that one of the great values of Social Security benefits is not only do they last a lifetime, no matter how long you live, but they're also inflation adjusted. And for 2025, Social Security beneficiaries received a 2.5% increase, which is just about average over the last 20 years, smaller than it has been in recent years. But people are seeing a bump in their Social Security benefits. The basic Medicare Part B premium that is deducted from Social Security benefits only went up about $10 a month. So most people are seeing a real increase in their Social Security benefits for 2025.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, folks, this has been a fascinating conversation. We're kind of in the midst of a big change that's going to impact, I think, all of us in 2025. So, Mary Beth, thank you very much for jumping on today. We really appreciate all your contributions. If you want to connect with Mary Beth, where you downloaded this, you'll see links that'll go to your website, right? Do you want to give us that real quickly?
Really simple, www.marybethfranklin.com.
Hard to remember. Great job. And hey, where you clicked on this on our Breakthrough Advisor podcast page, you can click there, and there's a list of resources below. You can also surf to InsurMark.net. We've over the years built a very robust resource library for advisors around Social Security planning with technology, videos, and educational content from Mary Beth. So it's a great resource for you. Hey, Mary Beth, thank you very much for joining us today. Hey, folks, this is Jack Martin. I'm the virtual CMO for Simplicity InsurMark. I want to thank you for joining us on the Breakthrough Advisor podcast today.
Thank you for listening to the Breakthrough Advisor podcast. Click the subscribe button below to be notified when new episodes become available. The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the guest and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of InsurMark. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only.